Hey, we're your hosts.
I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Jonathan.
And we believe that one of the most valuable gifts you can give to yourself is the gift of wholeness through integrating all aspects of what it means to be human.
And in this podcast, we're bringing you insight, information, and inspiration to move from a stressful to stress-free life.
Your journey to becoming even healthier and happier starts right now.
Welcome to Wellness Theory, the podcast.
Hello everyone, we are so excited for today's conversation. Today we are joined by Samir Geepee, a conversationalist, a leadership coach who inspires, motivates and creates opportunities for individuals by unlocking their hidden potential. He does this through deep conversations, connecting the dots and looking at every situation through his own lens. He's also the founder of the Awesome Walkers, which is a community for high achieving professionals who are looking for more than just success. Welcome to the show, Samir.
Thank you very much, Charlotte and Jonathan. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So Samir, tell our listeners a little bit more about you. Who are you and what's it like being you?
What's it like being me?
Yes.
I love that question. It's lovely. It's fantastic. I get to step into myself every single day. I wasn't like this for the longest period of time. I was trying to be somebody else. I was trying to please other people. But lately, ever since I discovered the world of coaching, I just realized how everything who I am comes into that profession for me. And it's a beautiful feeling when you're playing to your strengths. It's a beautiful feeling when you're doing things that lights you up. So for me, every waking day is about discovery, about curiosity, about helping people with clarity, about being of service to others. It's amazing.
I love that so much. It's such a unique question, and the answer is always so different. So I love that. It sounds pretty cool to be you. So Samir, on that, tell us a little bit more then about your journey and what's led you here, because you mentioned like you wasn't always like this. So what did it used to be like being you?
Yeah, I like all traditional Indian families, I don't know. You're either an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, or a nobody, they say, right? So you have to be one of these. I took up the engineering route. I went and became a civil engineer first. And then very early on in the course, I realized this is not what I want to do. And then I started my journey of trying to find out who I want to be and what I want to do. And from that space, from that soul-searching intention, I've always been going and trying to do different things. I had 7 different career paths trying to see who I am until I landed on coaching. And coaching happened when I was 39. When I woke up to coaching, I discovered the world of coaching. I realized, oh my God, I can just have a conversation, transform people and get paid for it. So brilliant, right? So it was not just about me. It was really about the other people. And I really realized that I was doing it all my life. I was doing it, but not knowing that I was doing it professionally. I was not doing it with the intention of making a livelihood out of it. And I realized it's just lack of information, because when I told my family I'm going to be a coach, their first response was, Samir, why didn't you choose this before? And my answer to them was another question. Why didn't you tell me before that this is what I should do? But everyone around me recognizes that this is what I should have been doing from the get-go. But I always say people have the best of intentions, but not always the best of strategies. And you can see this in your profession when people don't want to have stress, but they end up having stress. You have the intention, but you don't have the strategies on what to do with it. And my life is about exploring as many tools as possible constantly so that I can add value to others. And that's what makes it great to step into myself every single day.
It's amazing what you said there, where the people around you saw the type of person you should have been, like that coach, but you didn't see it yourself. It took you a while to actually kind of create that level of awareness. You think, actually, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at doing this. This is what I'm passionate about, and kind of leaning more into that, which is amazing. I think so many people go through their life doing things they love, but they don't realize that they can actually turn that into a career, into their life, basically, like, and earn money from it. And people around them will tell them all the time, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. But we just don't believe it. We don't think, no, it's just something I like to do. But how long or what point did it take for those people around you telling you, or that they knew it before you did, before you actually believed it? So what was that moment where you think, actually, this is who I am, this is who I want to be?
That's a beautiful question. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. My whole body is tingles. I was sitting in the NLP class, 39, 2016, when I had decided. I was selling paratha and karak chai in Qatar. I was working with a company I was a VP over there, and I decided this is not what I want to do. I resigned my job and I was moving to Turkey. And everybody was, why Turkey? What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I have no clue. I'll go there and figure it out. And then what happened? There was a bomb blast and there was a curfew and there was emergency kind of declared over there and nobody could go there. So instead, I took a detour, went to India, did an NLP course. I was sitting in the class and I was practicing these modalities with one of the guys in the class. And he had a breakthrough. And then, like an epiphany, it just hit me. And I remember the class is going on. In one corner, I stand up. I look up into the sky and say, oh, thank God. Thank you. You brought me to what my true calling is. It was that moment, I don't know how to explain it, but in that moment over there where I was sitting, I just stood up and looked up into the skies and said, this is who I am. This fits in perfectly. If you're looking for a logical answer, I don't have what that is. But when I look back right now, what I realize is in 2019-20, I did the Gallup Strength Finder test. And when I did that test, I realized my top 5 strengths come into play in my everyday action as a coach. And the thing with Strength Finders is this. The things that comes naturally to us, we take it for granted. We think, that's too easy. Anyone can do it. Because we have been doing it for so long, we build it into ourselves as it is an operating model for any human being. Not realizing that the strengths that we have and the strength that somebody else has are a completely different set of strengths in a completely different combination. And therefore, how you leverage on these combinations is what makes it magical for us. So the moment was that, yeah.
I love that so much because it is, like you said, it's like if you're looking for a logical answer, and not necessarily, because I don't know if it is logic that leads us to those big aha moments. I think in this modern world, everything almost seems quite logical, and naturally, especially when we feel particularly stressed, like we tend to cling on to some kind of certainty or safety, is this idea of being able to control the outcomes, right? So we do the things that we think we should. But for you, it sounds like when you was in that moment, having that breakthrough with your NLP friend there, that you was able to experience that breakthrough, like through witnessing the power of it. Like there was obviously a feeling that was present when you had that moment of giving thanks. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And I think the logical answer came in when I did the Strength Finder test. The emotional answer came in when I did the NLP program. So it was a complete circle where I had a scientific backing to what I was feeling and experiencing in my life. Yeah.
I love that.
There's something that recently happened and I want to, go ahead. I had another question, but this is yours. So recently a friend of mine, he passed away. And everybody used to say he's always happy, even under stress, under pressure, he performs with a smile. And I felt when we do things in that manner, we are not acknowledging what's within us. We are not acknowledging the pain. We are not allowing the emotions to pass through. Especially so in a work situation, I was in stress in a lot of areas I was not even recognizing. But when it comes to coaching, no matter what the stress is, I'm able to handle it in the sense I'm able to let the emotions come in and realize that this is not painful. This is a journey towards growth. And this is helping me actually in a very different manner.
I love that. And that's essentially like pretty much what we do, isn't it? I mean, obviously our listeners are very aware and our listeners will be able to relate to, but hopefully both sides of that coin, because, when we are stressed, we're often having some kind of restriction. We're not allowing those emotions to flow through, right? And that's when it becomes unhealthy stress, right? Though when it's acute stress, like you've just mentioned, it's almost like a growing pain. It's something that is temporary. It's something that's impermanent. But when we restrict that flow, we end up holding that tension inside of our body. We become more logical, like we said earlier. We start to perhaps not live as authentically as we could. And Samir, one of the things that I absolutely really love about what you do, or what we love, from especially like the initial conversation I had, and then the research that we've done with the work that you're doing, is that a lot of your work stems from the values of being authentic and being consistent and being committed to making a difference in the community. And I say that we admire this so much because we share some similar values. It's at the core of what we do too. So out of curiosity, what made you focus on those values? Because obviously you've got your strengths in play, you've got this feeling of who it is you are and how you want to show up in the world. But what is especially like the importance of making a difference in the community? Why is that such a big part of what you do?
That's such a very beautiful question, because like I said earlier, I went and did engineering, right? And when I was 16, I knew clearly I didn't want to do it, but I didn't have the voice inside me to stand up, speak up, and show up in front of my parents and in front of others. And what was holding me was I didn't have the information of who I am. And therefore, I started fulfilling the expectations of those around me. And I know the pain of inauthenticity. I know the pain of not living up to yourself. I know the pain of living somebody else's version of you. And I've done that for so long that I just wish nobody else does.
What were some of the feelings that you could describe from living that way?
Oh, suffocation. I used to always say this. I will die of suffocation, I would say. I don't want to be here. I don't want to live here. This is not the place for me. I have to get out. It was always a sense of running away. And what I realized was, literally, maybe I was running away from the physical environment, but metaphorically, I was running away from other people's expectations of me, just so that I could step into who I am. And I went and lived in China for 8 years, trying to discover myself. And that was a big part of my journey. And I saw that distance is not what makes it step into yourself. It gives you the space when you move away from familiar surroundings, so that there's nobody else influencing your thoughts and decisions and ideas. It gives you the mind space for you to reflect. It gives you the mind space to meet people who are total strangers, who speak to you and share about the magic that you do in their lives when you speak to them, when you talk to them, when you do things, and that reinforces for you. I truly believe we all need believers in our life, people who will believe in us. And we got to surround ourselves with believers. The moment we surround ourselves with believers, our life becomes transformatory. When we are surrounding ourselves with doubters, then we start doubting ourselves. And then the self-doubt keeps creeping in every single day. Will you be able to do it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to make this happen? If there's a constant sense of doubt around you in terms of whether it is your colleagues, whether it's your family, whether it is anyone, then what happens is it creeps into your own thinking. And unless and until you're not authentic, unless and until you don't know who you are, you won't be able to stand your ground. And then it will make you shift. It will make you stressed. It will make you feel weak. And when you're weak, you don't take good decisions. And when you don't take good decisions, it catapults and it becomes like a snowball, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you reach a point where you suddenly start looking back at yourself and saying, hey, where the hell am I in this picture? And this is most probably what I call the midlife crisis, where you just don't recognize yourself anymore. You're doing everything for everybody else around you, but not for yourself. You've made the home, you've made the car, you've made the family, you've done everything for everybody else, but you're feeling empty inside.
So
authenticity is, yeah, go ahead.
I'll say, I was just thinking, so what you said there is so many people, anyone listening to this, a lot of people can think relate to the fact they're probably living a life that was created through a perception of what people think they should be living. Is they're not enjoying, they're not living their true authentic selves, because they are, like you said, they listen to those doubters and they start to think, oh, I need to act, or I need to do this, I need to do that, because this is what's expected of me, instead of surrounding themselves with a community of people who are supportive, who are non-judgmental, who are non-critical, who support them in everything they're doing. And when you have that group of people, when no matter how small or big that group is, it helps you to really find that true authentic version of yourself, and do what it is that you're born to do. And that's different for everyone. But it's like you say, community is so important, but the right community, I think, is key, is finding those right people who not only can support you, but you can support them at the same time. And you have that kind of synergy in the group that helps that you help each other grow, no matter what it is that you're trying to do in life, no matter how crazy the idea is, no matter how crazy the goal is, you're all there to support each other in that. And I think that's where it's so key with anyone listening, is if you're in a group of people who are basically telling you, no, don't do this, don't do that, or don't risk it, so you might fail, might be time to find a more supportive group of people who are going to help you to grow and challenge your ideas a bit more. But I think if you're not challenged enough, if you're not failing enough as well, you're not dreaming big enough. And I think to be your true authentic self, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to try and risk everything to be that true version of yourself, and step away from those type of people who are those doubters who are trying to pull you back down as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful what you said. And what's occurring to me is, when people say, don't do this, don't do that, perhaps what your listeners can possibly do is, all right, then what should I do instead? And a lot of times they don't have the answer. And if they do have the answer, tell me why. Yep. What am I bringing to the table that makes you say that? So when we have the capacity to unpack ourselves, and I use this word a lot, unpacking, we are always constantly unpacking ourselves. And initially, when we are listening to those friends, we are believing that they are our believers. We are not realizing they are our doubters. And we don't know the distinction between who is a believer and who is a doubter in our life initially. So it becomes a part of our journey to distinguish them and clarify that, and then keep the ones who are fueling us rather than draining us.
So how does somebody that might be listening to this, how do they, in your eyes and in your experience, how do they begin to live more authentically? Because one of the things we've definitely witnessed with a lot of the people that we've worked with is that frustration that comes with living inauthentically, living without the restraint and being able to be truly free in who they are. Where does somebody begin, in your experience, to explore that?
It's a great question. First of all, I think it's a lot of unpacking again. You got to unpack who you are by looking at your strengths, looking at your values, looking at where you stand as a human, looking at what your goals are, looking at what is it that you're looking to do and how you're choosing to do all of those things, and where is your journey. And if you're finding in those gaps, then start looking for answers for those. Try to fill in the blanks. And when you start filling in the blanks, you ask again yourself, why am I choosing this? And if it is because of my parents have told me, my friends have told me, all right, then go and ask why. What is it that I'm bringing to the table? And it doesn't become about them anymore. You suddenly start realizing it's about you when you're looking at authenticity. When you're looking at serving, it's about others. But when it's about authenticity, it's about you. And if you are not filling your cup first and foremost, then you won't be able to fill other people's cup for sustained amount of time. You might be able to do it for a short period of time. This especially happens when people are looking for a job. They do it most of the time with inauthenticity. They look for a job just because they want to pay the bills, they want to have money, and they just step into anything. What job are you looking for? Anything. I'll do anything. And that's okay to begin with. When you're beginning a career, it's about you exploring. I always say confidence is not a place that you start from. It's a place you arrive at. And what that means is confidence is built as a result of you creating positive evidences. Evidences of what? Of your values in action, of your strengths in action, of the things that you do well. When you consistently see it giving you results, you want to do more of it. So that means you're operating from a space of authenticity. But if you're in a work situation, either it could be the environment that is toxic or it is the work itself. And we got to distinguish that. If it was a different boss, would I be happy doing this job? If it is not the job and if it is not the boss, then there is something that is missing over there. And it's for them to explore that. So authenticity about unpacking and realizing what needs to be there. And the metaphor that I give for this is a backpack. You're going on a hike. You're going on a hike and you just take the bag from the store. And before you go, the wise thing to do would be to open it up and check what are the stuff that are in there. And most likely there would be, I would say, like stones or energy bars. Stones are things that are heavy, that is pulling you down. That's probably from a previous hike that you did. And you don't want to be carrying it on this new hike. Energy bars will always fuel you. Stones will always hold you back and drain you. So get rid of the energy bars. I mean, the stones, which are your limiting beliefs, anything that is holding you back. And step into what's great for you, what will move you forward. And constantly keep, I feel, iterating the things in your backpack, meaning your people, your resources, your time, where you're spending, your energy, everything that is giving you energy, be mindful about it. And let go of the things so that you speed up on the journey of life.
I love that. We love a metaphor, especially a backpack metaphor as well.
That one a lot.
It's what I really love about what you do is you obviously, like, you talk about unpacking things, and one of the ways in which you do that is obviously through conversation, right? You describe yourself as a conversationalist, and I find that really interesting because as human beings, I think we're all conversationalists to some extent, right? It's how we always function in the world. So could you describe a little bit about what that means to you to be a conversationalist and how perhaps you use that to help people to unpack what's important for them in their lives?
So this happened about a few years ago when I was doing the Awesome Workers interview, and I was interviewing someone who said, I just love talking. So I went and became an RJ. And in that moment, I asked myself, what is it that I love to do so much? And I realized it was conversations, something as simple as that. And then I suddenly realized breathing is something that you do all your life from the time you're born. And you don't become mindful about it until you go for a yoga class. And suddenly you realize, oh, you either go for Vipassana or you go for yoga, and then suddenly you realize, oh, there's a better way to breathe. There's a more mindful way to breathe. Same with conversations. The moment I identified conversations is what I want to do, I started becoming mindful about every conversation. And the moment you become mindful, you realize it's not just the words that are spoken to others, it's also the words that you're speaking to yourself. And unpacking is about reading between the lines and seeing what's in people's heads that's not being spoken. And the moment they articulate it, they give it life. And the moment they give it life, they create an opportunity for them to deal with it. If it remains unspoken, if it remains unarticulated, it becomes like a ball of spaghetti in their head, which they're trying to sort out without speaking, without saying. So either journal or talk to someone. Either one of these two things, when you start doing it, what will happen is that spaghetti will start becoming more straight, and you start seeing things more clearly and identifying what can be done different, what can be done better, so that you can live a stress-free life.
I love that.
Nice. I think for me, I've never been a big talker. Like I like silence. If I'm in a group of people, I'll be the one who doesn't say much. I just kind of sit back and listen. But I quite like silence. I feel comfortable in silence. But I know a lot of people don't. If they're in a silent situation, they feel the need to keep adding, like talking or breaking their silence for some reason. Why, in your opinion, why do you think a lot of people feel uncomfortable when it comes to sitting in silence with people or even with themselves? They feel the need that something has to be said.
So this is the difference between extroverted people and introverted people. Introversion, right? Extroverted people are people those who draw energy from other people, and they're able to process their thinking even further when they are in conversation with others. Introverted people are comfortable in their own place, and they feel drained when they are in other people's conversations. I have had some of the most beautiful conversations with introverted people because they reflect more, they think more, they go deep into their own thinking, and they are used to that. So it's fine with them. So I don't see, it's just again a misconception that extroverted people will become more successful in life and they are the ones who will go further ahead. Tim Cook, famous introverted person. There's most people who are public speakers actually are introverted people. Toastmasters, for example, a fraternity who is about public speaking, have a lot of introverted people because they need to go to stage only when they have to speak and they have to share a message. Otherwise, they don't have to engage in chitter chatter.
Yeah.
So I always say the quality of your conversation depends on the quality of your life. And if the quality of the conversation, not just with others. So Jonathan, the one you have with yourself as well. So silence does not mean you're not having a conversation. You are having a conversation constantly. Like they say, we are meaning-making machines, right? We're constantly making meaning out of everything that's going on in our lives. And therefore, you are having a conversation. When you say you're in silence, you're having one with yourself. And is that a meaningful one? Is that something that is serving you? Is that something that is helping you grow? Is that something that is pushing you forward? Is that something that is helping you serve others? If you think of all of these elements and aspects, and if you're integrating your strengths to be of service to others, you're living a life of magic.
I love that. I love that you brought it back to the energy piece of being introverted and extroverted, because I think that's so, so important. Often, especially younger people, I've noticed, like they are more like, I need to be more extroverted to be able to do X, Y, Z, or to be able to show up in this way or that way. But actually, like you've said really, really, really beautifully, is that actually it's more about who you are and the quality of your own life and your internal dialogue. Because it's very clear to me when I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're saying something for the very first time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that they haven't formulated the way that they're thinking yet. They don't know what they actually already know. Like we actually said before we hit record today, didn't we? It's like we actually do have the answers inside of us all the time, but sometimes we need to use that power of language to get there, whether that's through text, like and written word, or through vocalizing our experiences. I think that's something really, really powerful, because we're living in a world where when we look at media, we're wanting to express all of the time. There's a lot of expression going on, but then there's an awful lot of consumption going on, which is creating a lot of distraction to actually that reflective nature that we all have access to. So I'd love to know actually your thoughts on the impact perhaps technology or the way society is moving right now. How is that impacting our quality of conversation, either with others or with ourselves?
I said we are all meaning-making machines, meaning we are constantly making meaning out of everything that we consume. And it definitely has an impact. How it impacts is up to us. How we choose to consume that information is completely up to us. If we are coming from a space of awareness, it's great. As young people, when they consume, they have no clue how to actually process this. I believe coaches are good coaches, I would say, are the biggest believers of their clients. There would perhaps be no one else in their life who would have believed in them like a coach does, like a good coach does. And the moment they have that believer on their side, and the moment they're able to process, the key word over here in this whole in the entire question that you have asked is about how we process things, process information, process experience, process everything that goes around in our world, process what's going on in our heads. And when you're constantly in a space of mindlessly consuming, you remove the space to process. The amount of time that you actually sit back in silence like Johnson and process things reduces. And when we are saying yes to something, we are always saying no to something else. Because the time is limited, what we can do is limited. And in that space, if we don't create the space within us to look at things mindfully and to reflect and to grow from that space by the means of processing, we will be held back. So any of your listeners out there, one question that they can ask themselves is, how much time do they spend on processing? People ask me all the time, with respect to work, how busy are you these days? And I tell them, the goal is not to be busy. Why do you think I have to be busy with a lot of clients? I don't want to be busy. That's not what I'm chasing in life. My top 3 values are freedom, creativity, and learning. And freedom does not mean just of location or work, or it's about me feeling a sense of freedom. And you see, that's where it links back to authenticity even.
Yep.
I want to be free of other people's expectations of me. I want to be free of anything and everything that others expect of me, and to live life in true authenticity, which means to come from a space where I'm being me. So that's why I said I loved your first question.
I really love what you've said there, because that to me is authentic leadership. And it's funny, isn't it? Like we obviously run our own businesses. We would describe ourselves as entrepreneurs with the different projects that we have going on. And one thing that I've seen the most since we've moved back to the UAE is that unhealthy, hustling grind. And it's been so interesting to see and to transition back into that world where you're so close with it. So for anybody that isn't aware, we was in Thailand for almost 2 years before coming back to the UAE, after originally moving to the UAE in 2013. So we've been on this journey, haven't we, of being able to see and to experience, just the different approaches to life and the different way different cultures do things. And it's been fascinating. Since I've been back, one of the things that I've had to really make sure is that I stay true to myself in the exact way you've just described, is to not get sucked into that busyness and the expectations of others. For example, things like booking and appointments. I know we've had this podcast recording in the diary, I think, for maybe 6 weeks, maybe longer. And that is purposely because we guard our time for the same very reasons that you've just described, because we have other things. Not that this isn't important to us, because of course it is, but that it's authentic, and we can show up with our energy and to show up with true presence, because we are spending time with loved ones, because we are getting that rest time, because we are spending time to learn and grow rather than go from one appointment to the next. And that's something that I see happening with a lot of clients that we work with and that come to us in the beginning. They are in that fast pace, and they often struggle to step out and find what that authentic rhythm and pace of life is. So I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that, and how perhaps somebody listening can really embody that idea for themselves, that they do have their own pace and that it's okay for them to go at that pace.
I believe the problem stems from the fact that they are here in UAE. They're all expats. They're all here coming to make money. That's their fundamental goal for most people. For the majority, their North Star is not looking for work-life balance. Their North Star is not, they'll come down, settle down over here and live a life where they'll spend the rest of their life and retirement here. Although now things are changing, and we see there's a lot of shift that's happening in UAE currently. And that's beautiful about the leadership, which is why I love this country. And the fact that this whole community of coaches and well-being specialists such as you are coming into the place and making this impact is truly amazing. The fact is, if they were back in their home country, they have the support system of the families, they have the support system of so many other, which creates the balance of life. It's absent at this point of time over here. So it's about making those meaningful connections around over here and then starting to grow. But in the space, when bills come, when prices go up, and when you have the threat of losing your job looming over your head, and when you have a boss that is putting so much of pressure on you, you stop functioning in a way that is meaningful for you. And I guess in that space is where they lose themselves and they start being something for somebody else and just survival. And when you're in a survival mode, then what happens is everything begins to shift. I believe the key, which has really, really helped me, and I've been an entrepreneur since 2006. So from the time I went to China, and just one brief year, I was in Qatar doing this paratha and karak chai for, it was a hospitality. They wanted to go global. They wanted to spread across the world. They said, can you come on the team? So that's why I went. But otherwise, since 2006, and I've realized the key to being stress-free, I would say, is to live within your means, to not overstretch yourself, and to be content with what you have, and choose lifestyle decisions and everything that comes from a space where you're able to do it at ease. When you have to stretch, when you have to do things to buy that fancy car or live in that fancy neighborhood, you're bringing in the ingredients for you to ultimately be stressed or go through anxiety or go through depression or go through whatever that is not helpful for you. So it's about the relation that we have with why we are here, perhaps must change first.
Absolutely. I think it's what you said is so true. Like when the first time we came over here to the Middle East, it was that hustle and grind method. It was like make money, work hours, and get stressed. And I think so many people, like you say, do that. They get to that stage of burnout before they start to realize I can't keep this up. And I think then it comes to, for me, when it happened to me, I had to have a very, very kind of hard conversation with myself about, okay, like, this isn't working anymore. I'm suffering a lot. It's like this life shouldn't be this hard. And it is then, like you said, it's getting to the point of living within your means, is thinking, okay, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of pressure, but you can deal with that pressure. You can choose how much of it you want to let affect you and how much of it you want to control your life. You can either let it all control your life and just work every hour under the sun and get depressed, get anxious, get stressed, or you can say, okay, this is happening. I don't need to work 16 hours a day. I don't need to take whatever my boss says personally. If he's having a bad day, I don't need to function in this way to be able to be successful, to make money, to do what I need to do. I can live within my means. I can make money. I can be successful with ease as well. It's changing that perception of it, and it's having that conversation and realization that it's not just one way. There's millions of ways to do the same thing. You just got to find the way that works for you, and that allows you to do that with ease.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because we can still grow whilst being in a state of ease. And I think there is this misconception that you can't. Actually, I think you grow so much more when we are in that state of flow and ease. It's almost like there's this like internal conflict sometimes, and I experience this from time to time, where I'm starting to get wrapped up and caught up in the passion of what we do, and it's like, whoa, hold on, when was the last time you checked in with yourself and had that processing time that you described? So I'd love to know just like your thoughts on that.
Jonathan just now said life shouldn't be this hard, right? And I was just thinking, life can be hard if it's helping us grow. Life shouldn't be this hard if it's making us stressed.
Definitely.
So if it's really making us grow, that hard is. It was, I believe, who was Tony Robbins' mentor? What is his name? Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is the one, I think, who said, don't wish for life to be easy, wish for life to be better. I mean, don't wish for yourself to be things for you to be easy, but wish for yourself to be better, which means it's about our personal growth. And if you're growing in that direction, then it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
So, Samir, we're talking about having these conversations, whether it be with ourselves, whether it be with kind of us and the way we perceive and relate to the world around us. One of the things that we learn from the people that we work with and through the research that we do and some of the questionnaires that we have for people that come and work with us, like the stress scorecard that you just did before obviously hopping on today's recording. One of the things that comes to light often is that difficult conversations tend to stress people out a lot, right? And being a conversationalist, and this being something that's almost like your area of expertise, how would one approach a difficult conversation, whether that be with themselves, their boss, or a loved one?
That's a beautiful question. And being a conversationalist, it's not that I don't go through difficult conversations myself, right? Just because you're a brain surgeon doesn't mean you won't get brain damage. Just
You're human.
So I love the definition of courage. Courage is doing things despite the fear. So you have fear and you're stepping into that fear and you're acknowledging the fear and you're saying, okay, this is what's going on inside. This is where I'm coming from. This is what's stopping me. Having that awareness, have unpacked that awareness completely to the point where you're saying, let's see what will come ahead. Most likely what people are doing is they're trying to solve a problem in the future with the mindset that they have today. In a conversation, what can unfold, they cannot predict. There can be so many directions that a conversation can go through. And very likely what happens is they feel sometimes attacked, which is why they don't have a difficult conversation. They find it will drain them, which is why they don't have that conversation. And I feel the one thing that they have to really identify is what is the problem that the conversation is about. And where are the values that you're coming from when you're dealing with that problem? Ignore the person. The person will have different stance. And in a difficult conversation, the reason it is a difficult conversation is because there is one piece which is missing as an element in the conversation. And the piece is respect. If we believe the other person will respect us, we will not have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
When we find out, when we know from past experiences, when we know from all the conversations that we have had in the past, that this person doesn't respect me, so how am I going to relay what I want to say to that person? So that could be a difficult conversation in the work context. I'm not going into the context of where somebody has died and you have to relay that message. That is also a difficult conversation, but that's an entirely different context. But when you think of the context of work-life balance or the work situation where at work or in a relationship, you have to speak to someone and you have to relay some information or you have to say something or you have to give your point of view, very likely it is because the respect is not there. And most likely, you are not getting the respect from them as you feel you should because you are perhaps not respecting yourself the way you should. You have not stepped completely into your own authenticity to own yourself and completely take command of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah.
And when you have that control system in place, when you know exactly this is who I am, this is what my values are, and no matter what comes ahead, I will face it, then I guess it's a recipe for how to deal with difficult conversations. It's not going to be easy, but
yeah. So what if you have somebody that does respect themselves and they know how to command themselves, yet they still come up against some resistance when it comes to their boss at work, let's say, for example, and they know for sure that their boss doesn't respect them because their attitude perhaps is being perceived that they don't really respect anybody. Like, how does somebody in that situation start to either build that respect or at least navigate that kind of conversation?
Then deal with the resistance. Once you have said what you have said, if your boss is resisting or attacking, start asking questions in a way where you first put out the intention that This is not an attack, or this is not something that I'm saying against you. This is for me to process what's happening over here. Why is it that we are not able to have a conversation? Because this is my goal and this is your goal. We are aligned over there, aren't we? If that is the goal, let us deal with this in a manner that serves us that. So it's about really braving up to the outcomes and not to the person, not to the situation. And when we are focused completely on the outcomes, and if we see that there is no alignment with the outcomes, then the best thing would be to actually make an exit, because you start seeing you're staying in an environment where it's not serving you. I just was listening to a recent Netflix movie, I think called Shallow, where there's a lady who's stuck on a boat or island, and when there's sharks coming around, and then there's one shark that's attacked her, and then there's blood coming out of her legs, and then every time she steps into the water, the sharks are coming hungry for her more and more. And I saw such a beautiful analogy by what happens in organizations, where the moment they see you're weak, they will keep attacking again and again and again. And unless and until we don't step into ourselves and we take charge, and it might be very difficult for us to do this by ourselves, which is where people like yourself can come into the picture and help them process and become who they are before they deal with those conversations. If they operate from the same space where they are to go and deal with that boss, it will be very difficult. They have to see their journey of growth in that process of conversation that they're having with the boss.
Yeah. It's powerful what you've said there, in particular where you mentioned the outcomes and the way you relay the conversation, because often when somebody feels like they're needing to have a difficult conversation, they're already in their own fear usually, because they're perceiving that it's going to be difficult. And I've got a couple of key people in mind when I'm asking this question, because I know exactly how they've described it. And it's like they do feel a bit panicked or a little bit anxious about having a conversation. And like you said earlier, when we move into a conversation, when we're in this survival mode and we're already expecting a fight, we're already expecting that somebody's going to attack us, you're already starting off on the back foot. Whereas if you're coming into it with a resourceful intention of, we're going to move into alignment together, wherever this conversation flows, wherever it takes us, we can navigate it and we will figure it out. Provided we are aware of the language we're using, provided we know what the reason for that conversation is. I think it's really, really powerful.
Can I add something over here? One of the reasons for these difficult conversations to occur is also when they're in this conversation, they're listening for themselves. They're listening for themselves. They're not listening for the other person or for the context. The moment they shift their listening, if they're listening for themselves, anxiety, stress, am I right? Am I wrong? Am I doing the right thing? All those questions will show up. The moment they stop listening for themselves, but listening for the outcomes and listening for the overall objective, then what can happen is they can move towards success. In a conversation where there is a toxic boss who's coming and speaking, so they call this level 1, level 2, and level 3 listening. Level 1 is where you're listening for yourself. Level 2 is where you're listening for the other person. You're focused on the other person. Level 3 is you're focused on the global or the whole context of where you are coming from. When you are going into a difficult conversation, if you are the one who is speaking, you have to make sure that you... So who is in control of a conversation? Again, this is a very important idea, right? When you're speaking with the boss, do you have that? Do you know the answer? You know the answer, right? Who is in control of any conversation?
You tell us. I believe that both people are 100% responsible for their role in any conversation.
So in a conversation, at any given point of time, who is in control is the one asking questions.
Yep.
So you were in control, but the moment I asked you, then I got in control of the conversation. And then you had to go to where I was leading you to.
Yep.
So in a conversation with someone, if you're constantly speaking, realize that the other person is in control of the conversation. If you want to take back control, it's about you asking questions. And the moment you ask questions, you take a little bit of control of the conversation. And in that space of control, when you're controlling the conversation, you can operate from either level 1, 2, or 3 listening. So you can ask questions which is about yourself, or justifying yourself, or protecting yourself, or you can ask questions which is to understand what they're coming from, where they're coming from, what they're saying, etc., to clarify, or you can focus on the big picture.
Yeah.
So when you take control in a difficult conversation, it's about you realizing where are you stepping in from.
Yeah.
And the moment you have that awareness, the tool that, hey, am I in a level 1, level 2, or level 3 conversation? And is this serving me this question? On a short-term basis, it might look like, hey, I justified, I proved myself right. But in the end, did it serve the objective?
Yeah. That makes perfect sense as well, because if you think as also is when somebody is feeling particularly anxious about a difficult conversation, often those emotions are out of control. So if you can start to regain that mental clarity to be able to take back some kind of control or command, it can also start to settle down some of those feelings that might be arising as well. I love that you mentioned that. That's really, really useful for any of our listeners. I think that's really, really great.
So here's a question for you, Samir. Is how can someone who is already a confident communicator get even better?
So confidence is created as a result of creating more positive evidence. The more positive evidences you create, the more confidence you have. So if you're a confident speaker who speaks in front of 10, you can aim for 100, you can aim for 1,000, you can aim for 10,000, you can aim for becoming a great public speaker that impacts millions of lives. If you have 10 views for a video, ask yourself, if I have to make it even more impactful so that more people watch it, ask what needs to change. So the question, if a confident speaker wants to become more confident, perhaps is it confidence that he's looking for? Because he might have all the confidence that is required to present a subject. So maybe there's something else that's missing. Or maybe it's, how do you define confidence is firstly something that I would want to know. Because when you say you want to have more confidence, what does more signify for you? For me, it is more evidence. Create more evidences, more positive evidences of you doing well that is creating transformation. I love what Benjamin Zander said about his impact. Benjamin Zander is a Philharmonic orchestra conductor. He's given a beautiful TED talk on classical music, and he's been a conductor for ages. And his TED talk is very widely watched. And he realized one day that as a conductor of an orchestra, he holds 2 sticks that makes no music. He is the only person on stage that is absolutely making no music at all. So he asked himself, am I really making an impact? Am I really making a difference? And the answer to that question he found, he said, in the eyes of the people. If their eyes were shining, he knew he was making a difference. So I believe for confidence also, are you making more eyes shine? The more eyes you make shine, perhaps the more confidence you will have. And more confidence is perhaps about having more believers around you than more doubters.
Nice. I love the way you answered that. So there's definitely a common theme throughout everything we talked about today, is that whenever we're communicating from a place of authenticity, whenever we're having these conversations, it often leads to a place of clarity, right? And clarity is something that obviously is very, very important to you. It's a big part of what you do. So you want to just share a bit more about that for us?
Clarity is, I feel, like the core of an onion. It's at the heart of an onion. You got to peel layers and layers and layers before you can actually have absolute clarity about what it is that you want to do. There's a guy who walked up to Gary Vaynerchuk one day and said, he has his videos always of random people walking to him, asking him questions. One guy said, I have 100 ideas and I want to do all of them. What do I do? Gary said, pick one and do that. Finish it and then pick the next one. And that's clarity, right? It's about you knowing exactly what you really want to do and then focusing on that and then realizing where it is all coming from. I designed, so I was traveling through Scotland when you guys went to Thailand, and I went to Europe actually. And I was traveling around in Scotland and England. And I met this lady who had created this board game called Transformation Game. Amazing, amazing game. I host these every Wednesday now in Dubai. And out of those deck of cards and the board game, I took a few of the cards and I started a game called the Clarity Game. And I started playing this one-on-one with people. And to begin with, what will happen in this conversation is they have, how are these cards coming for me? Where is this coming for me? And suddenly you realize it's not about the cards, it's not about me, it's really about them. And then suddenly when they start unpacking themselves and they start seeing that it's coming from a space of non-judgment, they open up, they share, they explore. And we're surrounded by advice giving monsters, I call, constantly in our lives, either on social media or friends or family. Everybody wants to give us an advice. And when we are surrounded by people who wants to give us advice, then what happens is we don't listen to the, I would say, monster inside us who is also screaming and saying, hey, this is what you have to do. And then you block that out. You block it out. And when you go through a game session or when you go through a conversation with someone who doesn't judge you, and you start facing those thoughts and ideas and what you really want to do, you emerge with a sense of acknowledgement, a sense of belief, a sense of, I can do this. That probably was missing. The only thing that is missing, I love, do you watch AGT or BGT? The America's Got Talent or the British Got Talent?
We used to watch Britain's Got Talent,
yeah.
didn't we? Yeah.
Catching a bit now and again.
So there's a golden buzzer when everybody gives them a golden buzzer. And that golden buzzer moment for me almost always brings me to tears. Because for me, it's about the guy who's standing on stage in full authenticity, not expecting anything, but just being themselves. And then it's about the entire crowd going crazy, being believers. And when you have a room full of believers for the first time in your life that screams and shouts your name and wants you to go further, there's nothing like it. So when it comes to clarity, it's about putting ourselves out there. It's going that mile and facing our own fears and exploring what can we do with this that we have. When I came up with the first realization that I love conversations, I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, how do I make money out of it? I mean, I was already doing coaching, but I wanted to do something even more. So I went to an organization. I said, I hold spaces for you guys as leaders. As leaders, if you are a leader, as a CEO and your first direct reports, you come into the room, you sit down and we'll talk. What will you talk about? I don't know. What will be the questions about? I don't know. What's the theme? I don't know. Just come, sit down, kick your shoes off, and we'll sit on bean bags and we'll have a conversation. And the way things unfold, there'll be 2, 3, 4 skepticals in a team always. But the beauty of vulnerability is this. It's like a domino effect. When one starts dropping, then another starts dropping, and then it just intensifies as it goes around. And then it intensifies and it reaches a point where after the session is over, they're like, oh my God, what did I tell my colleagues? Or what did I tell my friends? When you play the transformation game every week, the space that is created for the players when they finish playing the game, all 4 people who are on the table, they have gone so deep in their connection with each other because they have said things that they have never said anyone before, number one. They've never articulated these things ever before because the game is facilitated and it cannot be played without facilitation. So when you go so deep, it creates a sense of magic inside you. It's like, oh my God, I'm so amazing. I'm so wonderful. And imagine if we had those butterflies that scream inside us saying, you are beautiful, you are magic, you're pure beauty, you're pure joy. And you either believe it or you're like, ha, that's not me. I got to go make money. I got to go finish a PowerPoint. Very often people are like, all this, what you're saying is good for theory and philosophy. It doesn't work in the real world, Samir. You heard that probably also, right?
Exactly. That's one of the things I love about what you've shared there in the game, because that's one of the biggest things we see in organizations is that it is just like move on to the next task, to the next task, and there's this humanity piece that's getting lost, which is, who are you? Let's just stop for a moment and drop into the present so we can show up and communicate authentically. And you start to build those deeper bonds and those deeper connections. I would imagine you see that a lot through the game.
Yeah. It's not describable. It's very difficult to describe it. You got to experience it. For example, if you watched 100 videos of Thailand, would you get the experience of having gone to Thailand and done those deep work over there?
No, of course not. Yeah.
You couldn't have sat in Abu Dhabi, watch 100 videos and say, oh, now I'm here. I can feel it. And now I'm going to come back to Abu Dhabi once again. And I'm going to start this wellness theory and I'm going to be successful. Doesn't work that way, right? You got to experience that journey. You got to be in that process. And when that happens, what's happening is rewiring in your head. What I love about the way you guys are is I can already see you guys complement each other so beautifully. You guys are there for each other. The way each one of you have your own strengths and you play to those strengths. And that's what should happen in organizations. That's what should happen in teams. You should be surrounded by people who complement you, who fuels you forward. And if that's missing, then the most respectful thing to do is to tell that person, we will help you find another job or another place. But if you need that support from us, ask us what you need, but perhaps this is not the place for you. Moving on is you serving you as a person. So don't hold yourself and struggle here, rather. And that can come only from empathetic leadership. That can only come from people who really wish and care for others. When we are having that kind of leadership, it can be a transformative experience for everyone at a workplace. They always say, no, you don't quit a job, you quit a manager or you quit a boss. You're always going away. Like I was running away. It was literal, but it's also metaphorical. And when you stay, you become sick. And when you become sick, you will manifest diseases and cancer and heart ailments, and you'll start releasing chemicals in your body that is not good for you. And
exactly. Samir, I think we could talk about this all day long, and there's so many more directions we could take this conversation. But where can our listeners find you if they want to continue this conversation with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. They can drop me a message on LinkedIn. Name is Samir Geepee. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure the link is in, obviously, all the show notes. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to add to the conversation today?
I like the question that you asked about authenticity. And I would say to your listeners, if you don't yet feel that you have stepped into your authenticity, start unpacking.
Love that. That's the core. That's the core.
Thank you so much, Samir, for obviously joining us on the show today. It's been great just listening to all of your answers. Obviously delving deeper into that. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I love the questions that you ask. And I see how, Charlotte, you connect the dots, both of you actually. You connect the dots, you bring in pieces together, and then you ask another question. Really enjoyed being here with you guys. Thank you. Amazing. One of my best interviews.
We'll bring you back on at some point to dive into some of those other topics. 100%. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.